unbeatable. TVS's Apache RTR 1604V has dominated the segment, and it's all thanks to that engine. Pitted against Suzuki's Gixxer, the Suzuki surely was sharper and more involving, but the RTR came out on top because of its huge advantage in terms of performance and, well, comfort as well. Talking about practicality, we pitted it against Yamaha's FZ. The RTR came out on top, and that was because it had better fuel efficiency and refinement. But now we are in the BS6 era, for which the 164V gets fuel injection. But it's going to be challenged by a new contender now, Hero's Xtreme 160R. Excitement is key, and the Xtreme, with its simple 2-valve engine, seems to be a little underprepared for its battle with the RTR, which has a 4-valve head, an oil cooler, and even though it had to squeeze through the BS6 gate by shedding some of its horsepower and torque, it still got more than the Xtreme. So, if you're going to compare these two, enthusiasts like us need to know hard facts, like 0 to 60 times. And in that run, you'll find that there's just a gap of 1/10 of a second between these two. And at 80, the gap widens with the RTR in the lead to half a second. But that is to be expected. After all, that can rev to 11,000 RPM, while this only goes to 9,000. The RTR's gearbox is smoother too. The Hero's is a bit clunky. So the RTR is faster, but that is not the full story. This sticker has robbed this Apache of its RTR quotient. Not only is this BS6 version slower than the carb BS4 version we had tested, in fact, even when we tested the BS4 carb and the FI, we had felt that the FI had less mid-range.
There is a bit of difference in the way the carb and the FI bike feel though. Throttle response on the FI is a little bit sharper, and it doesn't run out of steam even at the top end. The carb bike on the other hand feels a little gruntier, though it is a little gruff as well. But on the whole, in many ways, the car bike actually feels more enjoyable to ride.
And on this motorcycle, you can really feel it. To get it going in normal pace, you have to work it harder. You really have to use the revs to get going. And that makes it feel like a bit more work than before. Secondly, this Hero, making 15 PS. That's more than any 2-valve out there while meeting BS6 emission norms. And the reason why it runs so close to the RTR in terms of acceleration as well is because of its lightness. It's about 10 kilos lighter. And overall, it ends up feeling so peppy. Sure, the 2-valve head means it doesn't have the top-end performance, but the mid-range is so meaty and strong that using this motorcycle is really hassle-free and enjoyable. Practical advice. For city use or highway use, this is going to sound like a bit of a cop-out. Either will be fine. But if you want a focus tool for the city, the Xtreme will be the better pick. And if you intend to spend more time out on the highway, the RTR will be better. Not just because it's more free-running, also because it's more refined and a bit more fuel efficient there. And talking about refinement, the Xtreme is pretty solid. In fact, if the RTR did not exist, this would be the one setting the segment benchmark, and by a fair margin. The only reason we have to specify that is because the RTR's refinement levels are extraordinary. I love little details like this. This kick, for instance, has been shaved off on the lower edge so that it saves weight. And just like the RTR, the Xtreme also gets this duct here, which directs air towards the spark plug and the engine, basically to cool it down a little bit more. But the RTR has that oil cooler, so when the going gets hot, that will be the cooler one. The RTR's all-rounder appeal has also been cemented by its plush suspension setup. And well, now with the Xtreme, it has got a tough fight on its hands, because this hero can tackle rough roads really well too. But there is a difference between the two. The RTR is cushy, it's a bit on the softer side, whereas the Xtreme is on the tauter side, which means if you're looking to cover a lot of bad roads, that will be more comfortable. But if you're looking for one motorcycle that just feels right and tight even when you're riding faster, then the Xtreme is the one that will strike that balance. But there is more to the Xtreme as well, which will make riders feel more comfortable. First and foremost, it will be more welcoming for shorter riders because the seat height is lower by 10 millimeters. The foot pegs are set lower too, so taller riders will also feel more at ease here. And newer riders will find this more comforting because it feels lighter too, and it is lighter. It also has the tighter turning radius. So just maneuvering this motorcycle around overall is much easier than on the RTR. And that's saying a lot because the RTR is not a tough task to manage at low speeds either. What about the more comfortable motorcycle for the Pillion? Well, the RTR is it. This seat is lower, so it's easier to climb on. It's flatter, which means when you're on bumpy roads, you don't slide forward every so often, which is exactly what happens on the Hero. The cushioning is better and the grab rails are easier to reach out to. So Pillion comfort is definitely better on this. Sharp looking. Super sharp performance. But when it came to handling, the RTR wasn't the sharpest of the lot. And now, the Xtreme is going a bit extreme to take on the RTR. In terms of hardware, it's got the fatter forks from Showa. It's got the fatter front tire. It's got a radial rear tire. And it also has the bigger brakes. But the question is, which one is actually more racy? Hop onto the RTR 160 and immediately you feel that sense of sportiness. You can see that the foot peg is mounted quite high up. The bar is low. It's thick as well, so it has that chunky feel to it. The tank is shaped perfectly for you to hug it. And when you point it into a corner, you'll realize that you need to know and understand this motorcycle to really get the best out of it. Rake, as you can see for the steering, is a little pushed out, so it's not the quickest or lightest into a corner, but it will go in willingly. And once settled in with this long wheelbase, it is really planted. So even if you're a newer rider, you will find this confidence inspiring. But there are a few things that you will have to get used to. For instance, the brakes. They've always had a soggy feel, and it's no different here on the BS6 version. In case of emergency braking, you'll find that you do feel a bit worried because you really don't feel much at the lever, and it does tend to take a bit longer in terms of braking distances when compared to the Xtreme. Here at standstill, the Xtreme just doesn't feel all that sporty, does it? Get going, things change. That's when you realize this chassis is special. It feels light, precise. More importantly, it's a chassis that lets the rider take the lead. Irrespective of your skill level, you can find your rhythm and your pace really quickly. It's how communicative it is, right from the tires to the steering and of course the stability. The wheelbase is the shortest in the class, but still because of the hardware, this motorcycle does feel very confident. So all in all, you're getting a motorcycle that is easy to ride, quick and confident, backed up by an engine that has a lot of grunt. So corners can be super fun on this. If you aren't into cornering, here's some practical advice. I'm going to assume you're into touring, in which case it's Good to know that both these motorcycles have the same tank capacity, about 12 liters. And when it comes to the headlamps, both have all LED headlamps, but it is the RTR that has the brighter setup and has the better spread. The Xtreme's is a little narrow and the high beam isn't focused well enough to be really useful on a properly dark road. Now we're going to talk about annoyances, things that aren't easy to overlook but aren't deal breakers either. In the Xtreme's case, the switchgear. The quality isn't spot on and it just is ergonomically flawed as well. For instance, the turn indicator switch is mounted a little too high and is just always hard to get to when you want to use it. It's almost the kind of switchgear you would expect somebody to buy if they were told, here's some money, go buy some switchgear from a generic shop. Then there's the seat on the Xtreme. The way that it is curved up to keep that single piece design in place is just making the room for the rider a little too tight, and on longer rides that is going to press against the tailbone and make things a little uncomfortable. And then there's the seat mechanism. Just putting the seat back in place is something that makes you feel like you're not very intelligent. It's unnecessarily complicated. The RTR's mirror stalks are the right length. The Hero's are short, which means you end up seeing more of your shoulders rather than what's behind you. And then when we talk about the RTR, there's one big problem. What's with those Shin-chan eyebrows, TVS? But that aside, the RTR looks phenomenal. The luscious tank with the offset fuel filler cap still looks wow. The RTR more than justifies the slight premium over the Hero with its incredible quality. Both have digital instrument clusters as well, and neither of them have gear position indicators. The unbeatable RTR 160R has had the fight of its life. It's been straddling sportiness and practicality. And now, with the BS6 version, we can see that it still maintains its high levels of refinement and quality, which makes it feel properly premium. Some of that performance has gone missing in this transition, but nonetheless, it is a performance-backed motorcycle. So if you're looking for a sensible motorcycle, really practical, that has that dash of excitement, this is still a solid pick. But if, like us, you are looking for something that straddles the space between Suzuki's Gixxer and Yamaha's FZ with a bit more of the excitement quotient thrown in, then Hero's Xtreme 160R is the one to look closely at, because it has that grunty performance which you can use every day and enjoy when you're in the mood for it on the right road, and is backed up by a chassis that just feels so involving. Sure, it could do with a little bit more of premiumness in terms of its build quality and switchgear, but if there were one set of keys that we had to reach out for when we wanted to go for that ride, it would be the Hero. Yes, the Hero talks right to our heart. But given the newness of this Hero and the RTR's proven track record, our head says that we can't say that the TVS has been beaten just yet.